Namaste everyone. First and foremost, I would like to worship Vagartadi Vagartadi Jagatambikara Vande Parvati Parameshwari, the divine parents of the universe, Sri Parvati Parameshwara, to guide and bless us with the power, words, and its meaningful to acquire knowledge and to club super words to get great meanings while scripting the letters. Om Shri Dhanavantari Namaha. I hope you are all keeping yourselves and families safe and healthy during this pandemic surge. I, Dr. Shivprasad Sharma, Assistant Professor and Consultant, Department of Agriculture, GJ Patel Institute of Ayurvedic Studies and Research. Welcoming you all to today's Vaishnav webinar. Today's webinar is coordinated by Niti Research Sir, GJPIS Sir, with the encouragement of our mentor, visionary, dynamic executor, driving force of our GJPIS family, and an amiable personality, Professor Dr. C.H. Bavaria Sir, and our beloved Honorable President, CVM University, Engineer Shri D2 Bhai Patel Sir. On this occasion of this webinar, we come to know your boundless enthusiasm. There were more than 450 registrations, about 32.9 percentage faculty, the 30.5 percentage PG scholars, 25.9 percentage students of Ayurveda and different professional courses, and 4.6 percentage PhD scholars, 6.1 percentage of practitioners were registered. We are happy to share with you that have registrations from 42 universities, 3 countries over the globe, and pan India. Before we commence on the webinar, I request participants to follow some instructions. The questions and doubts you can directly drop into the YouTube live comment box. Feedback form link will be shared during the webinar. E-certificate will be generated by after successful submission of feedback form. And coming to about our university and institution, as you all know, the Hindi ISR is a constituent institute of CPM, Savarkar Vidya Mandir, modern day Takshashila, satellite educational township located in Vidyanagar and New Valley Vidyanagar, offering diverse range of programs over the past 75 years. CVM marching forward and established as a CVM University under the magnetic management team led by engineer Shri D.P. Patel sir. GJPISR is a model institution, the state of art in the field of Ayurveda, established in 2006 and indulging in quality Ayurveda education, clinical services, and research. And coming to the topic related to today's session, scientific writing is the process of organizing and shaping information with rare, evasive, and ambiguous statements are not scientific. If good research involves many coordinated steps. It starts from the hypothesis, selection of appropriate study design, study execution, data collection, analysis, and final scientific writing and evaluation. Conduct of study and publication requires ethics. Any kind of manipulations in the study is considered as a scientific misconduct and research fraud. Communicating your scientific work to the readers and scholars in an ethical manner is state of the art. Today's session is targeted to enlighten the audience with the knowledge of scientific writing and publication ethics by eminent speaker Dr. Supriya Raghuram. With this, I would like to invite Dr. Professor Dr. Yasmin Gujarati, Madam, to deliver, to explain her welcome address. Welcome address. Welcome.
Mike. Hello, good afternoon all. I hope I'm audible now. Thank you, Dr. Shiv Prasad sir. And with the blessings of Honorable Chairman sir, Engineer Bhikubai Patel sir, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all in this scientific writing and publication, ethics in publication webinar. It gives me immense pleasure to, first of all, welcome with utmost respect our director sir, Professor Dr. C.H. Babaria sir. I welcome you sir. I heartily welcome our respected and beloved Dr. Supriya Bhallerao madam as an expert speaker in this webinar. I also want to express my sincere gratitude to madam that in spite of her busy schedule, she accepted our invitation to be a resource person in this uh, webinar. And we know that there is a sense of confusion amongst the faculty members and researchers, even the students, about how to write, what to write, and where to publish. Even we find that there is an unawareness about the ethics related with the publication. So who is the best rather than madam to guide us all and enlighten us with the scientific writing as well as related matter related with the ethics in publication. I heartily welcome you once again, madam. I welcome all the faculty members, students of our institute. I warmly welcome all the participants who have joined us. I know there are faculty members from other institutes of diverse faculties, even students, PG scholars and UG scholars. So I warmly invite you all, and I know that you will be enjoying the intellectual feast from Madam today. So I welcome you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to invite Dr. Nikhil sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Global Jana, introduce our today's guest speaker, Dr. Supriya Bhallerao. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Our eminent speaker, Dr. Supriya Bhallerao, has completed her MD from Gujarat Ayurveda University in the year of 1998 and PhD from Maharashtra University of Health Science in the year of 2014. She completed MA Sanskrit in the year 1999, PG Diploma in Clinical Research as well as Bioethics in the year of 2005. Currently, she is working as Associate Professor in Interactive Research School of Health Affairs, Bharati Vidyapeeth. She have done projects for ICMR Center of Advanced Research in Clinical Pharmacology of Traditional Medicine in the year 1999 to 2004 and CSIR NMIT LI, the project named Herbal Based Preparation for Degenerative Disorders in the year 2004 to 2007 and done project under the Government of India, Office of Principal Scientific Advisor on the subject Immunological and Metabolic Effect of Panchakarma in the year 2007 to 2010. Her major research area is obesity and diabetes, including the associated cognitive impairments. She has done more than 30 publications in national as well as international journals and more than 250 invited lectures on challenges in research in Ayurvedic medicines, biostatistics, and pharmacovigilance of herbal drugs. She is the associate editor of the prestigious journal, Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine. So I welcome Dr. Supriya Bhallerao madam for her session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Shiv Prasad, Dr. Jasmine Babaria sir, whom I am seeing after 20 years almost after I left Jamnagar. So it is nice to see all my friends, my students, my colleagues after so many days, and it is always a nice thing to interact with like-minded people. So today I'm going to take this opportunity. I'm not just going to deliver a lecture, but we will have some discussion also at the end, so that if there are any practical problems, those will get covered. Before I start my lecture, I want to make two things clear. That first of all, there is some problem with my Wi-Fi connection, so it may get interrupted for 1 or 2 seconds in between, but it will resume back. So don't be panic. It will resume back. but there may be slight delay in delivering the matter in between. It is not continuous thing. And second thing is I'm not well, so I may be coughing in between, so kindly bear with me for that. With this, I would like to share my slides and we will start with the presentation. I hope my slides are visible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Are my slides visible? Yeah. Okay. So the topic which is given to me is scientific writing and publication ethics. And what I'm going to focus more that where we should publish and what we should consider while publication. And then we will see some part of publication ethics. How to write an article, we know much about it because we have seen, we have read journal articles, though I will cover it in 1 or 2 slides. But major focus will be how to identify where to publish. So that is going to be a main focus of today's presentation. Before that, why one should publish is a $1 million question, I think. Many of the PG students who are attending today might be thinking, oh, okay, all is fine that we have scientific writing and publication ethics, but why, first of all, we need to publish? So it is a very good question, but as we all know that publication helps growth of science. It is duty of a researcher like me who is working in a research institute and we are doing only research. So if I don't publish, in my introduction you have heard that I have done PG diploma in bioethics. So ethics says that if I do work and I do not publish, it is unethical, because I am doing research, I have got government grants, I have got some funds from my institution, my university, and if I don't publish it, even if you have not got any funds from university or government agencies, but you have invested your own money, and for what all? If you don't publish, then what is use of the work which you have done? So it is a moral duty, it is an ethical duty of a person who is doing a research in the field that he has to publish his work. Then it is kind of recognition to our contribution, what we have done, and it is a permanent record. That is what I have put as a last point also. It is a glory that suppose in 30, just imagine that today we are in 2021, but suppose in 3021 somebody is holding this kind of seminar and somebody is referring a paper like Bhalera et al. In 2021 has published so and so kind of research. See how immortal I have become in science. It is a good thing that it gets a permanent record to my name, my work. So we must publish. Publication profile of an author or institution is used for rating. These days, there are ranking to the institutions, to the universities. You must have heard about NAG. You must have heard about NIRF. So these are institutional ranking which government agencies are doing, giving us. So for that, individual faculty's publication profile is visited. How many papers have been published by the institution, that is also compared for giving this kind of ranking. So it is important that one must publish. And then there are some other benefits. You might be aware or you might not be aware, because many of the members in the audience are students, but for promotion, that you are assistant professor and you want to become associate professor, or you are associate professor, you want to become professor, then your publications count there. In the beginning of your research or teaching career, if you have some kind of publication, that is helpful. In government positions, if you have publications, that is helpful. So for different reasons, one has to publish. Publication is must. If you are doing a research, publication becomes must. So why to publish is not a valid question, I guess, and one should not ask why to publish. There are n number of benefits by publication, but the question is where to publish. So would you like to publish your work here, or would you like to publish your work in these kind of documents? So now what is difference in these two? If you compare them, what is the difference? The ones which you are seeing on left side are called as a popular literature. and the one on the right side are scholarly journals. And there is a gross difference in popular literature and scholarly journals. What is that difference? We will just see that popular literature, that is which we call as magazines, or they are published without any peer review. We will see the points. So popular literature is what? Their shorter articles are published, providing broader overview. What is Ayurveda? Ayurveda's principles of Dinacharya. So these kind of articles which will be helpful to general public also, they are getting published in popular literature. Author often is not an expert in the subject. Any journalist can also write such kind of articles, and name and credentials often not provided. The popular literature articles are written in non-technical language because they are made for the lay people also, general population also. So not necessarily that they are written in a technical language. Many a times they are written in a simple language which a general person or lay person can understand. Articles in the popular literature do not follow a specific format or specific structure. They are free flowing articles, and any different format, any ways how the author feels about it, the article is written. There is no specific format that one has to follow it. Then articles are not evaluated by the experts in the field, but they are just checked by the editorial board. And here the editorial board just, do some specific correction like spelling is wrong, or this is not very clear statement. The statement is too complicated. Please change the statement, make it shorter statement. These kind of comments are generally received, but nothing about science. No comments about science are provided for popular literature. On the contrary, scholarly literature, generally the articles are longer and they provide in-depth analysis of a topic. Where, where the popular literature is giving broader overview, here the scholarly literature gives you in-depth analysis of a topic. Then author is usually an expert or specialist in the field, and name and credentials are always provided with the scientific articles. They are written in a technical or scientific language which can be understood by the experts in the field or by the scholars of the field only. Then the next point is there is a specific structure such as abstract, then there is an introduction, material and methods, results, discussion, bibliography, that is references towards the end. So this is a typical structure of scholarly articles. And most importantly, these articles are reviewed and critically evaluated by a board of experts in the field, the process which is known as a peer review process. So there is some board or a group of experts which reviews the articles which are submitted to scholarly journals. They give you the comments, and then you have to modify your article accordingly. So now how this process of peer review actually goes like? First, the study is conducted. You are a student, you do your MD thesis or PhD thesis. You are a faculty, you have done some work as a departmental project. Your study is completed now. Then you write down the findings and communicate to a journal. Journal editors then review and send the article for peer review. So peer are experts in the field. Now I am an expert in, for example, research. So the articles, and that too I do lot of experimental research. That means I work with animals, work with cell lines. So the articles which will come to me will definitely not be on manuscriptology because that is not my forte. So journal editors decide the reviewer who is expert in that particular field. If the journal editor gets an article which is on experimental evaluation of so and so drug in diabetes, then they will definitely send the article to me because I am the expert in the field. Then the reviewers give feedback like how is the article? Is it well written? Are the points properly mentioned? Is it in that IMRAD format? Whether there is some overlap in the format which is given, that methods are described in results or results are described in methods. If there is such kind of overlap, reviewer will give his or her opinion on that, whether the ethics committee permission is taken, whether everything is done properly, statistical analysis is proper, the results are expressed properly. This kind of feedback reviewer give to the editor. Then the editor send the reviewer's comments, whatever the feedback has received from the reviewer, the editor send it to the author. So editor is a midpoint. Author writes to editor sends it to reviewer sends back to editor now send the comments to authors. Authors will then improve the article based on the feedback. If the reviewer has rejected the article, then editor will take final decision and reject the article. But if some suggestions are given, then the editor will ask the author to improve the article. And then when the author does the revision, it is again sent back to the reviewer for his opinion. And this kind of cycle, like reviewer can give you comment, you have to answer the comment. This can go up to n number of time also till the reviewer gets satisfied. You cannot ask reviewer that, okay, I have done it once, why are you asking now me another set of questions, or why you are not satisfied with my answer. This kind of questions you cannot ask. Once you are in the process, you have to follow the process whatever it is. So this process, I mean, I will tell you that there are examples that when that in which 21 times the article was sent to reviewer and the reviewer has given feedback. So it can go up to the time when the reviewer gets satisfied completely. And remember that after n number of revisions also, even the experts articles can get rejected. So if you are new for the publication, don't have expectation that my article will get published in first go. So after the reviewer gets satisfied, then the journal article ultimately gets published in the journal. So this is a whole process which is called as a peer review process. Now, peer review is done two times, can be done, I would rather say. It is a pre-publication, which is known to everybody. That article comes for publication to journal, and the editor does this kind of peer review, which I just explained you. And this review process can be blinded. That means the reviewer doesn't know whose article is this. Maybe the author knows that to whom my article is sent for review, or either way, that reviewer knows who is the author, but the author doesn't know with whom my article is, to stop the unnecessary undue influence on the reviewer. They sometimes the review can be double blind, that both of them don't know. Most of the journals follow this double blind kind of procedure. And sometimes it is an open review also, that clearly the comments of reviewer are sent to author with the reviewer's name and details. So this is a pre-publication review, and the other kind of review is post-publication review. So for many journals, this is available, that after the article gets published, someone can find some flaws in that. So there is a process called as open peer review process, where anyone can read the article and give his or comments even after publication of the article. If you have heard of journal club activity, that means a journal article is discussed among the group of students or faculties. That is also a place where the post publication review of a published article is done. And I must tell you that I work for JIM myself as associate editor, and every month on second Friday of the month we conduct journal club, and it is getting very good response from the students and the faculty members all over the country. The journal club is online, and you are also welcome to join this activity, because you will truly understand how the peer review process goes like. So this is about peer review. Now the question which is generally in our mind is, which journal? Okay, why to publish? We understand. We understood that what is peer review process, but which journal should I select? How I should select a journal? That is also an important question. So first criteria is the journal has to be a peer reviewed journal. If the journal is taking money from you and publishing your article within 7 days or 8 days period, please understand that it is not a good journal, and it is a business for these journals to publish articles. So peer reviewed journal will take at least 2 months. Every journal has different time, but minimum time or average time which ranges is from 2 months. It starts from 2 months. We have to give 60 days at least for the peer review process. So the journal should be peer reviewed. It must be indexed with some widely referred databases like PubMed or Medline, Scopus, Web of Science. So these are the indexing agencies. Remember that some journals write that indexed with Google Scholar. Don't consider everything which is written on the journal webpage, or from that you will get an idea how genuine the journal is. If they have mentioned that the journal is indexed with Scopus, Web of Science, or Cited, that is Science Citation Index. So these are the proper indexing agencies, well-known indexing agency. Google Scholar is a search engine. It is not an indexing agency. So if somebody has written that the journal is indexed with Google Scholar, don't take it seriously, because Google Scholar is not an indexing agency, it is a search engine. And it is ideal that the journal should focus on a particular specialty or field of science. Now, you know that in modern medicine, there are journals for even every branch: Journal of Ophthalmology, Journal of Pharmacology, Journal of Physiology. As of now, in Ayurveda, the journal, the publication, all these systems are very new. So we do not have a specialty journal like Journal of Sandhivat or Journal of, say, Stri Roga. These kind of journals we do not have as of now. They will come eventually, but as of now, at least see to it that you publish your article in a journal which is specially dedicated to Ayurveda. And avoid Journal of All Science where everything is published. Environment science is also published, material science is also published, some health research is also published. Please do not publish in any such journals. You have to select a specialty journal. Then few more points. Which journal? So the journal should has got established standing in the field. How you will come to know about it, that whether the journal is a established one or it is a new one? If you notice volume number and issue number. Volume is a, like, every year the volume number changes. Suppose this is the first year of journal, it will be volume 1. And accordingly, if you see that volume 120, that means journal is in 120th year. So likewise, you will come to know from volume number that how old is the journal in the field. And as old the journal in the field, it is established journal. It will not stop publishing on one day, or it will not have some fake things around it. That is for sure, and you will select that particular journal. Then has editorial board of the journal consisting of genuine and reputed researchers who are currently publishing. That is another thing which you must see, that whether there are names of some genuine or reputed persons in the field whom you know, then you can blindly say that this is a good journal. Now the last thing is about international journals. Many people feel like international journal. Understand that nowadays everything is online. Today, you and me are talking from different cities only because we can talk to each other online. So, same way, journals have gone online, and it has, it has gone beyond every border of country or geographical regions. Anyone can read a journal sitting. Anybody who is sitting in Timbuktu can also read a journal which is published in India. So there is nothing like international now. This is what to say. It is a pseudo feeling that I have published article in an international journal, and journals also give such names like World Journal of so and so, International Journal of so and so. And if you will see the editorial board, there must be some place in some small town or small city of India. So international, just because there is a tag international, doesn't mean that journal is a very good journal or very reputed journal. So remember, these things you have to keep in mind. Then you have to ask some questions, that is the journal available online? Because if it is online, anybody can read, it becomes automatically international and it is easy for the readers to access the articles. Is it an open access journal? Does it have an impact factor? Does it have site score? Under which quadrant of SkyMago journal rank does it fall? Now, first of all, let me tell you that impact factors, site scores, SkyMago journal rank, these are the things which only a genuine journal will give in its information. No other journal will even dare to cite these things because they do not have these things with them. So we will see what is what one by one. What is open access? That is the first thing. Online, all of us understand, but what is open access? So there are two models of publishing. One is open access and one is conventional. Let us first understand what is conventional. That when you search an article, only title and abstract is available. The full text is not available for readers. Then subscription based reader dependent model, that if somebody pays for the article, there is sometimes you might have seen like purchase an article. So you can even purchase that article and read that, but it is not available online to read the whole article. There are inherent quality control required for survival. So since they are doing such a stringency in their access, there has to be some quality in that, and that's why it is least misuse model. Whereas in open access, the full paper is available for free of cost, and their author pays model. It is an author pays model. That means author pays some processing fee, and sometimes the institution bear the expenses. Both sides, in the sense, I will tell you example of Journal of Ethnic Foods. So this is a journal which is supported by some Korean food institute. So anyone who, I mean, publish and wants to publish an article there, that institution will take care of the processing fee, and nobody has to pay the processing fee. No author has to pay processing fee. Still, the articles are available in open access. That means full paper is available. There is one disadvantage of this system. Though the full paper is available for us to read, there is one disadvantage, that quality control, keeping the quality, is a problem, because here nobody might pay us or nobody is giving some money, and then quality check becomes difficult. So this is a commonly misused model, whereas the conventional model where title and abstracts are only displayed, that is presumed to be a good model, because it is a reader. If reader wants, he purchase it and pays for it, and somebody is taking, I mean, somebody is paying for it, so the quality is maintained here. Whereas in open access, sometimes the quality may be less. So we have to decide that for which model we want to go for. Then comes the impact factor thing, site score, and SkyMago journal rank thing. So first of all, understand that what is a citation. So you must have seen, like in any research article, at the end there is a box like how to cite this article. So this is how, if somebody wants to refer this article in his work, in his paper, he has to cite like this. Now you can see that this is the article which Patwardhan K, that means Kishore Patwardhan, has published, and he has given, here 8 references you can see. So when there are 8 references, that means he has cited 8 works. In other words, he has 8 references means he has cited 8 works. So 8 works he has cited. So when his article is published, all of these people, those he has cited, gets one citation. That means once his paper gets published, everybody gets kind of one score. That is a citation score. 1 unit is a one citation that every individual gets. So this is what the meaning of citation. Now, when next person will use this particular article and cite Patwardhan K medical education in India, Patwardhan K will get one citation. So this is a meaning of citation. And when you get citation, that means your article is read by people and they are referring that work for their particular work, whatever work they are doing. So it is a good thing that if you get a citation. So I hope you have understood what is a citation. Now let us see with another example, and it will be clear to you. So there are 2 authors, let us assume. One has published 106 publications. His articles are viewed by 5,000 people. There are 5,000 readers of his all 106 articles. There are there are some downloads, and he has got 616 citations. Okay, and now look at this second author who has 242 publications, so more than the first author. He has 14,000 views. His downloads are also more, but citations he has got only 2. That means whatever articles he is publishing, people are not referring for their research work. So his contribution or his or impact of his research is very much less than the first author. Don't just go by the number of publication. Many people, many times you will hear in conferences and all that he has published, she has published 200 articles, 300 articles, but then go back and check what is their what number of citations they have received, because ultimately citations is something which will decide what kind of impact your research is making. So this is the importance of citations. Now let us come to impact factor. So the impact factor is calculated based on the citations you have received for the articles which are published in journals which are indexed with Web of Science. I hope I'm clear. I have told you that Web of Science is an indexing agency. Scopus is an indexing agency. These are well-known indexing agency. Google Scholar is not an indexing agency. I just giving you reference so that you can recollect when we have talked this. So the articles which are indexed in Web of Science or indexed with Web of Science, if your article is published in those journals, now one journal can be indexed in 2 or 3 indexing agencies also. But impact factor is calculated for the Web of Science index journals, and it is average number of citation it's each published paper has received. Every paper published in that journal has received during the preceding year. That means if a journal has an impact factor 5 in 2013, then its papers published in 2011 and 2012 must have received 5 citation each on an average. This is the meaning, and I'm going to show you this with calculation also. So remember that impact factor has its own limitations because it doesn't consider which number of author you are, first or last or in middle. It doesn't take into consideration the it just considers the citation, but it has major limitation is this. Another thing is in Ayurveda there are very few journals, and the journals are read also by very few readers. So if few readers are reading, how many citations they will receive, how many citations the journal articles will receive. Whereas if you consider a field like molecular biology, which is very much popular these days, the articles are read by larger number of people, and then the citations are also more because the molecular biology is a subject which the people in US also are working on, the people in Australia also are working on, the people in India are also working on. So there is a huge researchers database also, and that's why they will keep reading the journals which are published in the field. They will cite the papers which are good in their field. So these journals will get more citations. These articles will get more citations as compared to the articles of the subject like Ayurveda. So that difference is not considered. For for example, the journal Nature has impact factor somewhat around 40 or 42. But in Ayurveda, as of now, whatever journals of Ayurveda are there in our country, JIM, AYU, or ASL, then Journal of Ayurveda from National Institute of Ayurveda, none of them have impact factor. JIM is now in a position to get impact factor. But as of now, we do not have a journal which has impact factor. Why? Because this is a major reason that we do not read, and even if we read, we do not cite. In our field, some people are of opinion, अरे उसका क्यों quote करना है, उसका क्यों cite करना है, उसको क्यों importance देना है. So if this is the situation, we will never get citations, and our journals will never get impact factor. So I hope you understand that what is impact factor, and impact factor is declared by or announced by Thomson Reuters Journal Citation Reports. Now, what I told you, that if you have to calculate an impact factor, see, for example, for a journal called Nature, then we have to, if we have to calculate its impact factor for the year 2017, then we have to have the citations in 2017 divided by publications in previous 2 years. So you can see here that citation received in 2017 are around 74,000, whereas the articles published in last 2 years are around 1,700. So the impact factor comes 41.577. So this is what is impact factor, and please understand that it is calculated based on the Web of Science citations. Then next is site score. So as impact factor is calculated based on the Web of Science citations, site score is calculated for the citations which have got for the journals which are indexed with Scopus. So instead of including citations made in 1 year, it covers for 4 years. So older articles also get their full citation impact rather than reflecting only 1 year. So this is the only difference you will understand from here, that if we want to calculate a site score for year 2019, we will consider the citations received in 16, 17, 18, 19, and then suppose we call the number as A, and how many articles are published in these 4 years. So let us add those numbers and let us call that it as B. So site score for 2019 is A divided by B. So this is the difference, that impact factor is for 2 years, site score is for 4 years. Impact factor, the citations are calculated only for 1 year. Here the citations are also calculated for 4 years. So even the older articles get due credit because of the site score, and they also contribute to the site scores. So this is the meaning of site score. And there was third point, that's Skymago journal rank. So if you remember, I have told you that the journals which are there in the molecular biology field and the journals which are there in Ayurveda, we cannot compare their impact factor because the readership is different, the research work is different, the research culture is different in both the science disciplines. So there is a system called Skymago journal rank. This is a science citation index, and how it gives the journal rank. It has made like complementary and alternative medicine is a quarter. So molecular biology will be another quarter. Medicine will be third quarter. So in each quarter, how the journal is performing. So now for Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine, we will see the performance in the complementary and alternative medicine field only. We will compete with the journals which are there in the complementary and alternative medicine field. We will now not contribute to, compete with the journals of molecular biology. We will not compete with the journals of bioinformatics, but we will compete with journals which are there in the field of complementary and alternative medicine only. And this improves, as I have told, that there is complete difference when we are in our own domain. We are more comfortable. Like suppose tomorrow, let us assume, just to give you an example, that university ranking is to be done. Suppose this is a situation. So everything, every university, engineering university, agricultural university, Ayurveda university, health university, every university will compete there. And then maybe our rank will be somewhere, I don't know, I'm not sure, but our rank, let us say that Gujarat Ayurveda University stands at the number 5, because it is a nationwide ranking system which included all the universities. So Gujarat Ayurveda University ranks at 5. But tomorrow, if we do only Ayurveda University is a quarter, and in that, if we want to give scores, then Gujarat Ayurveda University will score on first number. So this is the difference, that if we make the domains different, then the journal or the whatever we are rating will get an appropriate weightage which or appropriate recognition which it requires. So this was about these three things: impact factor, site score, and SkyMago journal rank. Apart from that, what other points you will consider? Time taken for editorial decision should be minimum, because if you are a student, you want to publish the article in your studentship only. If it is going to get published after 2 years, then there is no use for you. Some people come to us that they want to publish for some uh, interviews, and that's why they want to publish. So suppose a journal is going to take 3 months, 4 months, and the interview is after 15 days, 1 month, then what is the use of that publication? So what time the journal takes to take decision is an important thing. Is there a convenient online submission process? Because remember that once you understand how to submit the articles online, it is a very easy process, rather than submitting an article through email and then keep sending the emails to editor that whether you have received, when I will get the review. In online submission you can see everything what is happening with your article. So manuscript tracking facility is easy in case of online submission. Is the acceptance rate known? So on many of the journals pages, acceptance rate is also written that it is 17%, 5%, 10%. So only 10% articles are accepted, whichever are submitted to the journal. This is the meaning. So you have to understand that you have to be so based that you will fit into that 5% or 17%. Does it charge the article processing fee? So there are different views and there are different things about this. So article processing fee, even good journals take, which are into open access, as we have discussed. But some journals just take fee and publish your article. So we are not talking about those kind of journals. We are talking about the journals which take money from you, but they give you a good review. The article goes and undergoes peer review process. You get some good comments. Your article gets modified, revised, edited, and that is a good sign. So फी पे किया, इसका मतलब है वो जर्नल गुड है या बैड है, ऐसे ये यू हैव टू चेक द अदर पॉइंट्स also, that what is the difference. And many a times, even if you go to the journal's website, from the front page, the page of the journal which is given on that site, you can recognize what kind of journal it is. Generally the predatory journals and all, they have the typical, for Ayurveda journals, the typical kind of herbs and some plants, these kind of pictures. Whereas you go to any good journal, you will find a difference. I won't tell you because I want you to search that how the front page also of the journals look different. Then is the process transparent? Then whole process. If you have any issue, can you go back to the journal editor and ask for like I am not agreeing with the reviewers comments. So can you suggest? And for few journals or for few good journals, there is a person called as ombudsman who is above the chief editor. That means if you don't agree with the decision, you can go to that person also and have like reviewed your article. So are there color printing charges, reprint charges? Now it is out of scope because everything is online. So printing is stopped by many of the journals. Now, what we have to remember from all this, that we have to be careful with fake impact factors, fake journal metrics. Many people are, you must have seen the people that I have published an article and the impact factor is 6.4, 5.4. Please remember that if the journal's impact factor is 5.4, 6.4, then it will take huge time to review the manuscript. It will give good suggestions, it will give good review. The article will get modified substantially, and then only you can consider that impact factor is true. You have to see that whether there is a Thomson and Reuters impact factor or any, and I will show you some names like how they quote the impact factor. Then author pays model of open access, that me only pay for the paper to get it in open access. If that kind of model is there, then you have to pay. And I don't know whether you are aware, but for some good journals in complementary and alternative medicine field, say for example BMC camp or BMC complementary and alternative medicine or evidence-based complementary and evidence medicine, the author processing fee is up to 1 lakh also. So are you ready to pay that much fee? That is something you have to ask for. Fake peer review process. It is just written that peer review, but peer review is never done. Then don't fall prey to call for papers. Once you publish one article, you will start getting many emails like, we read your paper with interest and we want you to publish paper in our journal also. And they all write some fake impact factor, some fake site score. These three things, impact factor, site score, or Skymago journal rank, they are called as journal metrics. So they will give some fake journal metrics also. But remember that no good journal will give such call for papers. Have you ever seen that Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine is sending such call for papers to you that please come and submit papers to us? No, you will never find. Have you ever seen, or if you ask Nature journal, do they send such kind of emails to people to send journal articles to us? No, they will never, because they have achieved such a status that people will feel like publishing in that journal. They don't have to go behind people. People will go behind that journal. Then claims such as under the process of PubMed indexing. Please refrain from such journals, because we don't know that since how long this process under process has been put on the journal site. Then claims such as indexed in Elsevier. Now Elsevier is a publication house. It is not an indexing agency. Indexing agency, I have told you, Scopus, PubMed, Web of Science, Sci Expanded. So these are the indexing agency. Elsevier is a publication house. It is not an indexing agency. So be careful when you read such things. And there are many bogus journal metrics like indexing agencies, impact factor, advanced science index, directory of journal quality factor, international scientific indexing, and what all kind of impact factor, universal impact factor, cosmos impact factor. These all are bogus impact factor, and please don't fall prey to such kind of gimmicks which journals play. If you want to identify a good journal, you go to the UGC care list and you will find the list of journals for our field and you can publish. This is a simple method. Now, once you start publishing, then so far now what we have seen, how the journals are ranked. But then we have to find out how authors are ranked. Because suppose an author is publishing continuously, then he will get, and he should also get some credit. He should also be rated. So there is an index which is called as H index. And this H index is given to authors. So it is an author level matrix. Earlier ones were journal level matrix. So H index is based on the distribution of citation that a researcher has received for his or her publication, and it reflects both the number of publications and number of citations per publication. This index is calculated using a set of scientists' most cited papers and the number of citations that they have received. We will take example of two authors and you will understand it very clearly, that we have to first arrange the articles, publications of author in order of citations. So suppose these are my articles and my one publication has got 1200 citations. Second has got 800. So likewise, my 10th publication has got 12 citations. Okay. And after that, if you see, my 11th publication has got 8 citations. So till 10th of my publication, you will see that citations received are more than my publication number. 12 is bigger than 10. But if you go to the next number of publication, 11th publication, it has got 8 citations and 8 is lesser than 11. So my H index becomes 12. Okay. Now let us take example of another author who has published some articles, and his articles, if you see that at 10th of his publication, he has received 10 citations. So the last column is the citation number greater than or equal to the position of the publication. So greater than or equal to yes. So his 10th publication has got 10th citation, and 11th publication, here he has also got 8 citations. So his age index is 10 because he has got 8, for his 10 articles he has got at least 10 citations. This is the meaning. So age index, I mean, tells the performance of author, how good the author is performing. And in the research institutes like where I work, they ask us like, what is your H index? In Ayurveda institutions or colleges, publication, if somebody is publishing, that only is considered very good. So nobody has yet started asking for H index. But as we will grow up and as we will proceed for ahead, the H index will be also asked. Now, there are some drawbacks of H index also because H index works properly only for comparing scientists working in the same field. Same like I told you about journals. I cannot compare myself with an author who is publishing in the field of molecular biology because he will receive many citations. His H index will be very much higher than me, and I will not have that many citations. So, for persons like me who are not working in Ayurveda institutions, to compete with the persons from other field who are there in the research institutions become a really tough job because they get it in H index like 30, 40, and for us to get 30, 40 citations is a huge task if you understand what I mean. The age index does not differentiate between books and articles. It is just like one of my book chapter also has received citations. So it is not very clear that whether the age index is based on books or articles, and it disregards the number of authors of a citing paper. I mean, if even if I am the first author, I will get counted. My H index will be counted as same as by this process I described you. Even if I am at the last in the author list, I will get the same H index. Even if I am in the middle, I will get same H index. So my position or my efforts towards that works doesn't get counted, and it doesn't give like here if you see my first article has received 1200 citations. But when I say that H index is 12, that 1200 is nowhere featured. It gets nullified. So it doesn't consider or it doesn't take into account highly cited publications. So this was about where to publish. Now when to publish is third question. We have seen why to publish, where to publish. Now we are moving to when to publish. So when you have completed your work, data analysis is over, your results are with you, that time you will think of publication that will be called as original article. If you have made some observation that adds significantly to the existing knowledge, on one case also, then you will publish it as a case study or case series. Many case studies are published in the pandemic time because COVID-19 is a unique disease, and if somebody is treated it with Ayurveda completely, then these kind of articles, case series are published. Or you strongly feel like responding to something that you have read, experienced recently. And this is letter to editor, means something is published in the journal and you think that you have some additional points to make, or you agree with the author of that article and you also have some similar data, some similar experience, but that material is not enough to get published as an independent article. So you will write a letter to editor. You will see that some letters to editor which I have written. If you want to check like how letter to editor is written, uh, my very good friend Dr. Kishore Patwardhan from BHU has published an article on Bloom's taxonomy and how we can have questions in our exams based on some analytical skills and not only based on recall or knowledge based things. And there I have written an article that how pramanas relate, praman, pratyaksha, anuman, they relate with the Bloom's taxonomy and how we should use this terminology while drafting papers. So that is a letter to editor which I have published recently in last 1 or 2 years. Or you have some unique and different explanations to some important phenomenon, review or hypothesis. You want to say like some Ayurvedic connotations of COVID-19. You want to write something about the treatment. So you can have your own hypothesis, you can have your own reviews. Before writing a manuscript, ensure that you have followed all the standard guidelines while planning your study. You have executed the study according to the protocols. You have ethical clearance, all the original case sheets, duly signed consent forms, investigation reports. In case you are working on plants, patients, anything, you have photographs, slides with you. You have license permissions for reproducing pictures, figures with you. You cannot just pick up any figure from Google and put it in your manuscript. You have to have permission, and there are different types of licenses. Some of you might be knowing that CC invite this kind of. I don't remember that very clearly, but there is some system that's certain kind of if they are licensed under the CC and all, then you can pick up the figures and publish it in your manuscript. But if it is not, then you have to take the permission of the authors, the original authors, that we want to reproduce the figure. Then you have no conflict of interest in publishing the result. For example, I will tell you that we have done some work for pharma companies, but pharma companies didn't want to publish that kind of means whatever results were obtained. So in spite of that, if I publish, then I have some conflict of interest, or I'm not doing the right thing, or I'm a company what to say manager or proprietor or whatever CEO of a company, and my company has only developed a drug and I want to show that the results are good, so I am only the author. So there is a conflict of interest because I want to promote my product, and that's why I'm publishing, and I may be magnifying the results. So this is all called as conflict of interest. You have selected the journal to which you are going to submit the manuscript, because although largely the journal guidelines are same, there are some differences in the in journal to journal guideline. Some journals want the abstract in 250 words, some journals want it in 300 words, some journals want you to restrict your references only up to 50, some journals want to restrict it up to 75. So accordingly, you have to arrange your article, and that's why you have to select your journal before you submit manuscript. And you have read the ICMGA guidelines, which are for the medical journal editors guidelines, which is for ethics into or everything, which it covers guidelines for everybody, publishing, writing, editing, reviewing. So you have referred to the relevant guidelines for you. Now, some important guidelines when you will be preparing your manuscript, depending upon the kind of work you want to report, there are different guidelines. For example, for clinical trials, you have this CONSORT guideline, Consolidated Standards of Reporting Trials. And if you go to the site, you will, if you Google CONSORT statement, you will get the full checklist, and you can write your manuscript using that checklist. There is a STOPE statement, that is strengthening the reporting of observational studies. If you have just done studies like what is the distribution of Prakriti in the city of Anand, the people who are in the city of Anand, what is their Prakriti distribution? So you have to use STOPE statement in your manuscript. Refer. So depending upon the kind of work you have done, you have to refer the guidelines. And if you go to this Equator Network, equatornetwork.org, you will find that all these guidelines are available in one place. You have to just click on this guideline which you want to refer, and that page will get opened. So remember this Equator Network. And how to write a journal article? I'm sure you all know that it is in EMBRAD format, that is introduction, methods, results, and discussion. The funny thing here is this structure is basically for the original articles. If you have done original research work, clinical or experimental, this structure is not applicable to say you are.
Madam? Ma'am, we are connected right now. Yes, ma'am, we are connected right now.
Okay.
Yes,
So we were at IMRAD format. So IMRAD
yes,
format
ma'am.
is not applicable for all articles. It is applicable for only original articles, and you can see here down that all the renowned journals in the field, in the medical field, they have already adopted the IMRAD format for their original articles. So we should also start publishing our articles in this format. Then who should be the author is also a main concern or many times asked question. So before going to who can be first author, who can be the last author, let us first see what are the responsibilities of author. Author should ensure that the article he is submitting is original. There is no plagiarism. There is no copy pasting. There is good record keeping. He has kept everything original with him, the case record or whatever the relevant documents. Integrity, honesty, objectivity, openness, and transparency. That means if something is asked like ethics committee permission, some letter, then he should be able to give those documents because he is transparent. Declaring conflict of interest or disclosures. If you see my recently published article in JIM, which is about the Ayush CTRI registered Ayush studies for COVID, then there is a conflict of interest which is mentioned in the last part of the article that author is also an editorial board of JIM, but author has not contributed in reviewing or editing of the manuscript. So if I am the editor and if I am submitting the article, it becomes a conflict of interest because then I would like my article to get published immediately or without any peer review, but that shouldn't happen. And that care is taken by the journal administration, the chief editor, and that's why I have to declare the conflict of interest that I was not involved in any of the reviewing process. Then copyright agreements that we are transferring the copyrights to journal, consent, license to reuse published consent, responsibility like corrections, withdrawing. If it, I mean, the time comes that that you have to withdraw the article, you have done something wrong, then you have to withdraw or retract the article. Then that responsibility also author has to take. So authorship is not just some good situation, hunky-dory situation that you are getting something of it, and it is not a situation where you should just celebrate happiness, but there is a lot of responsibility also with that authorship. So who should be first author, who should be corresponding, who should be second, third, or in between, whatever number of authors are. So first author is generally a person who does the work. He is the person who actually does efforts to do that study, to conduct clinical study. He recruits the patients, he gives the medicines, he documents the consent. So you can understand that student is generally the first author. Student has to be the first author, and corresponding author is usually the last member, last author, and he is generally a senior most person who takes the responsibility of the whole work. That is the the objective, that why he is at the end and why he is the senior most, because he carries the responsibility. Suppose some student does a research work, he publishes his article, and then he leaves the institution because he is there for MD or PhD. He leaves the institution. After 2 years, some query comes from journal. Who will answer the query? Who should be the responsible person for that? And with this logic, the corresponding author is generally the senior most person. Many people take the meaning of corresponding means those who will answer to the queries and those who will actually submit the article to journal, that is a corresponding author. No, it is not like that. Corresponding author is a person who takes the responsibility, who plans the study, who conceives the study, approve the final manuscript is a corresponding author. And second, third, and middle, any number of authors are whoever is helped in carrying out the work. Somebody has sometime back asked me that how many authors can be there in the middle. That first author is one, second corresponding author is one. Again, first author can also be two. If two students have worked on a topic and combining their MD thesis, the corresponding author, the guide is preparing one paper, then the both the MD students get first authorship. So there it is written that first two are getting, means whatever ABC and XYZ both have contributed equally. There can be two corresponding authors also. For example, I have published a paper where Triphala, effect of Triphala is studied on the adipogenesis in cell line model. So here giving Triphala, interpreting results, planning of the study was my work. But the work was done in one of my colleagues' lab who is a molecular biology person. So she also takes the responsibility of the paper because the work has actually been carried out in her lab. When this paper is published, we have written in the paper that both corresponding authors have taken equal responsibility of the project. So there can be two first author, there can be two corresponding authors, and the middle number of authors can be any, up to 100, up to 500. You can have as many number of authors who have contributed. The only criteria is that person has to contribute. Now, those who did not contribute to your study but help you in writing the manuscript, what you will do with them? Will you give them authorship? Like two students have done MD thesis, they have gone now, and the guide is writing with the help of third student. So, will you give authorship to that third student? And those who contributed to your study but did not help you in writing the manuscript, as the two students who have left college now, so they are not going to write the manuscript. So what you will do with them? Will you acknowledge these people or will you give them authorship? So there is a very simple rule. There are four quadrants which you can see. On x-axis, there is an involvement with manuscript from low to high, and on y-axis you can see involvement in study low to high. So those who have both the involvement very high, that involvement in study and involvement in manuscript both is high, you should list them as author. Those who have either of the involvement high and other one is low, like involvement in study is high but their involvement in writing manuscript is very low or otherwise, they should be acknowledged. And those who have both the involvement very less, they should not be included in acknowledgements, not listed as author. For example, your peon of your college, he helps you to do certain things in your work, but he doesn't get acknowledgement or authorship because his involvement is less. He's just doing it for the sake of job. It is his job to help you. Now, we will go back to our first slides where I have told you that how the peer review process is conducted. So when the article comes to you for revision from reviewer, then we have to read the comments very carefully. Don't be in hurry to resubmit your manuscript. If they have given 14 days to resubmit your manuscript today after receiving the comments, you just think like how you will answer. Do rigorous homework on the manuscript at this time point. Just not reply and just not say that this is not, I'm not agreeing, this is not valid. So responding to reviewers' comments is corresponding author's responsibility, and he has to revise manuscript thoroughly as per reviewer recommendations. Follow the reviewer's instructions. Deny politely. Don't say that I don't agree or I don't want to. I don't want to correct the thing in my manuscript as you have suggested. Kind of response you shouldn't give. Give your point to point by response. Suppose he has said that this has to be added, so you have to give a point wise, means you have to add that point in manuscript and plus point by point response in the sense. So say for example, he has said that Prakruti word is missing, that has to be added. So you have to write, yes, the word is added and the correction is done on page number 4, line number 26, like this. highlight the changes in manuscript with yellow color, resubmit only after consulting your co-authors. Don't just do corrections on your own, and stick to the time frame. If it has to be submitted in 14 days, submit in 14 days. What if reviewers fail to detect some errors? So as we have seen that there is a post publication model also, so errors may get detected after the publications, and sometimes considering the errors, the articles have to be withdrawn, have to be retracted. Sometimes the journal editors give erratum that so and so thing was wrongly communicated, and this is how you can make the changes. These changes are made. So this is also published. You must have seen this in some journals that in last issue this was a mistake which was made, and now it is being rectified. So these are the actions to be taken if the reviewers fail to detect some errors. Now we are coming to the last part of this talk, which is on research ethics. First, we will understand what is research ethics and how the ethics is violated. So there are three major types rather, how the research ethics is violated. It is said that we should give the data with honesty, with transparency. There has to be integrity, but just see that there are some cases. For example, it is a case of falsification, that in 1998 German research funding agency looked at 347 papers published by two researchers, Herman and Brack, and it concluded that 29 of these contained falsified material, that means wrong material, and found evidence of data manipulation. That means if you want to show that the results are good, you will, change some values, or you will change some readings, you will change some data, some demographics. Suppose a simple thing, you have to recruit the patients only between the age group 30 to 60. You have recruited one patient who was of age 63. Then while publishing that 63, you will make 60 just to fit into the criteria. So this is a falsification. This is a data manipulation. And then in this report, this funding agency found that there was evidence of data manipulation leading to suspicion of fraud in further 65 papers. So see how much fraud or how many errors they have found out. And in most cases, the falsification of illustrations of blood and other cells was noted. I will show you an example. Now, here the figure is given like histology of some PTWE, some water extract treated testis tissue at different time interval. And you can see here 7th day, 14th day, 21st day, and 28th day. And different concentration of that water extracts were given. Now you see this figure, 250 milligrams 7th day and 500 milligram 21st day. Isn't it just a mirror image? Isn't means aren't these two are the mirror images of each other? So this is called the falsification of data. It's just to make someone stupid of the by the data manipulation. Then there is the another type of ethics violation, that is fabrication. That means cooking the data. The data is not there, but in the first case, what we have seen, that data is manipulated. Here there is no data. MD student does a thesis, but he gets only 3-4 cases. But in synopsis he has written 15. So now from where the 12 cases will come? Write down that there are some cases, just fill up the forms and show that there were cases. So this is known as fabrication. So there is also a famous story that in August 96, the Malcolm Pierce published a paper, and that too in a good journal, British Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and he claimed to have rescued an ectopic pregnancy by transferring it into the uterus, resulting into a successful birth. The work had never taken place, and the patient did never exist. Four other fraudulent papers were discovered after investigation, two of which has been published in the BMJ. So just see that a journal like BMJ, British Medical Journal, there also people can fabricate data. So we have to be very, very careful when we are publishing, when we are reading something. So Pierce was terminated and struck off by the General Medical Council. So his name was removed from the Medical Council. So these kind of implications are possible that we have to remember. So fabrication is cooking the data. There is no data but just making the data, generating the data from nothing. Falsification is wrongly presenting the data, and then there is a plagiarism, which everybody of us knows that copy and pasting is known as plagiarism. यहाँ से उठाओ और वहाँ बिठाओ is known as plagiarism. So in US National Science Foundation also, National Science Foundation has coined this term and has come up with this. So a researcher was asked to peer review a proposal for research, which was later rejected on the basis of his comments. The reviewer subsequently submitted his own research proposal to another funding body, which was accepted for funding. This proposal was found to have plagiarized the original proposal. The researcher has submitted a number of other research proposals plagiarized from proposals he had been asked to peer review. So see, the person who was to do peer review has only stolen the ideas and taken the credit. So this is known as plagiarism, where copying and pasting, just उठाओ और अपना कह के बताओ, that is known as plagiarism. There are plagiarism checking software also available, free of cost softwares also available, and majority of the universities have their own softwares which can detect this plagiarism. So other forms of violation of research ethics, these are the three major forms. But then there are some small forms also, like failure to disclose conflict of interest. Like I told you that we have to, display, or we have to convey whatever disclose our conflict of interest, as I have mentioned in the paper which I recently published in JIM. But people do not disclose such conflicts of interest, and then it becomes a problematic case. Multiple submission, that means simultaneous submission of same paper to multiple journals, and this has been observed that same paper which has come to our journal was published somewhere else, and thank God we saw that paper before we accepted the paper which was submitted to us. So people do such things, as sometimes deliberately, sometimes because they don't know that we have to submit paper to one journal only at a time, and if the journal rejects, then only you can submit to another journal. Then redundant and duplicate publications, that means same paper is published in number of different journals, so that is also a wrong thing. In previous thing, it was multiple submission, that means submitted to multiple journals which the author can withdraw anytime. But here the publication is also been done, which is duplicate publication. Then suggesting bogus reviewers, giving an alternate email ID of the author only and saying that he is another reviewer. I will only publish, I want to publish a paper, and many journal ask for suggested reviewers kind of list. So in that, suppose I'm Supriya Bhalerao, I will give an email ID of somebody xyz.abc@gmail.com, and I will show that he is some different person. Actually, I have only opened that another email ID, and I will only review my own paper. So this is a bogus, suggesting bogus reviewers. Then guest authorship, including an author only because it may improve the chances of acceptance. Like I know that Dr. Tanuja Nesri is a well-known figure in Ayurveda, so I want my paper to get published. So I will just say, Madam, please aa jao na mere article mein. I'm sure that Madam will never accept this kind of thing. I'm just giving a hypothetical example. So this is a guest authorship. Ghost authorship means actual author's names not included. Means the person who writes, like two students have left who have actually done work. Third MD students write the manuscript, but since he has not done anything, his name is not included in the manuscript as an author. So the third student Bechara has written the manuscript, but he has not done the work, so his name is not included, and then this is how the actual author is not included, so he remains as a ghost author. Anonymous authorship, publishing with pseudonym. So there is a example of FDC Villiard. This was name of a cat, and on that name many papers are published. Surrogate authorship, publishing someone else's work in one's own name. That is also a kind of violation of research ethics. Gift authorship, adding the name of the spouse or friend as author. Many students, many faculty members who approach me, like they want some suggestions, but at the end they say like, मैडम आप इतना सजेशन दे दो, इतना मुझे हेल्प कर दो, मैं आपका नाम भी ऑथर करके डालता हूँ. I am nowhere in that paper. I have not done any work. I'm just giving a simple suggestion. So I did not. I am not eligible for authorship for that paper. So these kind of authorships are called, if somebody takes, they are called as gift authorships. So these all are forms of violation of research ethics. Then salami slicing means dissecting the data or submitting the data in different forms in different journals. For example, effect of Phyllanthus implica on hyperglycemia in type 2 diabetes will go to a biomedical journal, and effect of Amalaki in Madhumeha to an Ayurveda journal. Actually, the topic is same, but just converting little bit in the title and little bit in the text, people submit it to two different journals. That is called as salami slicing. And why it shouldn't be done? Because if somebody does the meta-analysis tomorrow of Phyllanthus indica or Amalaki, then 2 times the same work will get counted, and then the results will be, not proper, which we will get from meta-analysis. And this is ethical only if data is too huge, too big data, and each paper addresses substantially different questions. In the sense, in the Ayurveda journal paper about Amalaki, if you are going to talk only about Prabhuta, Avilamutrata, the Purva Rupa, then quality of life, and in hyperglycemia and type 2 diabetes mellitus, if you are going to talk about lipid profile, then glycemic status in terms of sugar, insulin, HbA1c. So you are using a completely different set of parameters, and that too if the data is huge, not in 10 patients, not in 20 patients. Editors must be informed in all such cases regarding prior publication that the half part of this manuscript is sent to so and so journal, which highlights these things. This kind of letter has to go to editor before doing this kind of salami slicing. So lastly, there is a committee on publication ethics, which is short form. The short form of which is COPE, and you can see that on the COPE page, the web page of COPE, everything is given. What are the editor's responsibility, journal owner's responsibility, publishers, reviewers. So one must go through these guidelines also, these responsibilities which they have mentioned on COPE, because this is a committee on publication ethics itself. So if you Google COPE, you will get this page and you can go through the details. So this was, I think, all about what I wanted to say about scientific writing and publication ethics. And I want to thank my good friend Dr. Kishore Patwardhan, who is from Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, and he is the one who is a master of science, journal metrics, and he only teaches all of us these things. So though Dr. Jasmine has said in the beginning that I am the last word, I would suggest you all that if you want to learn more about journal metrics, more about scientometrics, you should contact Dr. Kishore Patwardhan. His videos are on the same topics are available on Ayurveda Network's BHU site also. On scientometrics, he has published 2 videos there, so you could go through those videos. If you forget anything from this lecture, those videos are permanently available, and you can anytime contact Dr. Kishore, and I'm sure that he will be happy to help any one of you. So thank you very much. Thank you organizers for arranging this seminar and inviting me for the same. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for such a informative presentation. And there are some questions. Proceed with the questions.
Yeah, we can take, but the voice is not clear.
Shall I?
Okay, ma'am. Am I audible properly? Hello.
I guess there, now you are audible. I guess there are two devices running in the same room.
Yes, yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There are few questions we will take, ma'am. Uh, uh, Dr. Ritu Dixit is from Biotechnology College. Actually, she was asking to brief us more about UGC care list. Actually, itself is a very big question, ma'am. She was.
Yes, and it will take time to show you and demonstrate you, but you can go on the UGC care list, and if you have any problem, you can contact Dr. Jasmine, and I'm sure she will forward the question to me, and we can take it. But I think some things, you have to go and search, and you will find this kind of situation is there with this UGC care list.
Okay, okay. Next question, madam, was which journals are best for publishing paper, open access or conventional non-open access?
It is your choice. I mean, where if you want to make your work readable to everybody, you should go for open access because anybody can read your full paper. But if you don't want to pay for it, the author processing fee, article processing fee, and all, then you have to restrict yourself to the conventional type of articles, and conventional type of processing. So it is up to
Okay,
you whether you are in position to pay those processing fee or not. So that is the question. And I would suggest that some journals even give waivers for processing fees. Like I have published like this by writing to journals like Trials and all, also that honestly I was not in a position to pay these huge article processing fees. So you can write that I am from academia and I do not have any funding for publication, or I do not have any funding even for carrying out the research, but my research is a genuine research, good research. So kindly grant me the waiver for the article processing fees, and journal do that. If they find your work or you as genuine person, they do that.
okay, okay. Another question, ma'am. Already you have cleared it. I think importance of co-author, second author, third author. Actually, what happens, ma'am, that sometimes the guide, if the guide is himself or herself doing all the correspondence, then can he or she be the first author, and the
First
student
author
can be
and
the.
corresponding author. First author and corresponding author are two different things. I mean, completely
Okay,
two different responsibilities. First author is the
okay,
person who does work.
so that,
If guide has done, guide has gone on the site in OPDs and in IPDs and taken the consents, done the work, then definitely that person can also be eligible for first author. But generally the students do the work, and I will tell you, in biomedical field, being a corresponding author is considered as reputed thing. There was somebody from biotechnology. You can ask
yes,
her, ask the person, like, when I joined my research institutes, in the interview I joined is the current research institute. On the day of interview, it was asked to me, how many papers you are corresponding author. They didn't ask me in how many papers you are first author, because first author is a junior's work. They
okay.
they didn't ask me that question. When you are corresponding author, you are taking the whole responsibility. So being the corresponding author is much carries more responsibility.
Ma'am, ma'am, you are disconnected, I think. Supriya, madam, we cannot hear you. Madam, we are not able to hear you. Call करो. Hello. left the meeting.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. Madam is disconnected, I think. We are calling her right now.
Okay.
Yes, she has joined back again.
Sorry, I was disconnected. So
Yes,
I have told you in the beginning only that I might get disconnected in
yes, yes. It's okay, ma'am. It's okay, ma'am. Uh, can we take the next question? It is asked by Dr. Forum Joshi that Ayurveda UGC care journals are very less while considering for good indexing and reputed journals. So that number even reduces more. So how to select the appropriate journal while publishing?
I have told you so many things. The whole lecture was only that topic. So I have given you
Yes,
so many things that how you should select, why, what you should check in the journal.
yes, madam. Uh, one question is, if author write any conflict of interest, doesn't it cause any impact on acceptance? Hello,
Yes.
ma'am, you are not audible yet.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes, 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 ma'am.
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am, we
So
can hear you
I
now.
was saying that the whole first part of the lecture was dedicated to that only, that how to select a good journal. So I can't
Yes,
tell more than that. Now it is
yes,
up to
madam.
you that using those all criteria, you should select a good journal for your research work.
Okay. And this question was, if author write any conflict of interest, does it cause any impact on acceptance of the manuscript?
No, not at all. If you disclose, it is always considered as your honesty and transparency, and it is looked into that. It is considered in that way only. If you don't write, then it will be considered in a wrong way. Suppose you, as a reader, if you would have read my paper which is published in JIM, you would have also said that, okay, she is on editorial board. What a big deal! She is publishing an article in JIM, right? But when I disclose a conflict of interest that I have not been involved in the editing or reviewing process, then you get some kind of confidence that yes, journal is doing the work transparently, and yes, the author is also honest enough to disclose the conflict of interest.
Okay. One more question, ma'am, that many institutions are going for NAC also. So, which type of journals publications are counted for NAC assessment? I think
Actually, you must be feeling that IQAR or AQSC, whatever the rules, whatever is applicable. So there, for every journal, there are scores that if it is having impact factor, then how much? Then if it is index, then how much? So that is how the scoring is calculated. So of course, the good journals which have impact factor, citations, site scores, and SkyMago journal rank, all the journal metrics, these journals will be preferred ones.
okay, ma'am. One more question I want to ask. Citations, how can we count? Because sometimes, as you must have seen that on Google Scholar, the number of citations will be different. On ResearchGate, the number of citations will be different.
Yes,
Do we have
because
only to count?
you have to understand, like if you check my H index which is based on citation on Google Scholar, my H index is to 14 or
Yes.
13, something like that. But if you see it on the Scopus page, it is around 4 or 5. So why this happens? Because Google Scholar considers journals published at in any journal. But when it comes to Scopus,
Ma'am, you are disconnected again. You're not audible, ma'am. Supriya,
on
madam.
the basis only.
Ma'am, please repeat.
Yeah. This Google Scholar citation, which is calculated, citation index or H index is calculated by Google Scholar, is based on any journal. Means whatever article I publishes in any of the journal, Google Scholar will consider it. But when you go to Scopus, Scopus will consider the citations which are for the articles published in journals indexed with Scopus only. So the number of journals are also less, and that's why the citations are also less. So every indexing agency will calculate the H index or the score based on the citations received for the articles which are published in journals indexed with those indexing agencies. And that's why there is a difference in the citation index. But if you honestly ask, for routine purpose, we write the Google Scholar wala H index, but actually it is to be, I mean, now you understand that Google Scholar considers all kind of articles. So actually it should be Scopus based or Web of Science based.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much, madam, for clearing out all the doubts. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your time. Now, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Valerie Desai to deliver his presentation.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. May I audible?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You
May I
are
audible? Yeah. 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 Thank you, Dr. Supriya. I am happy and delighted that students, research scholars, and faculty members of so many universities have joined us today for understanding important aspects of publication, that is scientific writing and ethics in publication. Dr. Supriya Madam delivered the topic in a very simplified way with clear insight for all participants. Scientific publication is an important part of continuing professional development of teachers. To achieve expertise in the field of scientific writing is always a continuous process. Excellence in teaching learning process can be gained by this skill, and it is must for all teaching professionals and students. It also helps to disseminate your knowledge in bigger domain which is accessible to all. I hope today's webinar will help teachers, students, and research scholars to improve their performance in writing skills. We at G.J. Patel Institute of Ayurvedic Study and Research are always working to offer quality learning experience. My best wishes to all for your journey toward the professional excellence. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Supriya and whole team of the research cell. Particularly, very thankful to Dr. Jasmine that arranged such type of webinar, and we hope so in future too. They will do something for another topics in the field of research. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable message. I would like to call upon Dr. Priya Pranav to deliver.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Research Cell of GJPIS, it's my privilege to propose vote of thanks for this memorable webinar. First and foremost, I would like to thank the CVM University, especially Engineer Shri Bhikubhai Patel, sir, President, CVM University, and Chairman Charutal Vidya Mandal for encouraging and inspiring us for the conduction of this webinar. I am also very thankful to the dignitaries associated with CVM management. My heartfelt gratitude to our ever enthusiastic and dynamic personality, Professor Dr. C.H. Babaria, sir, Director, JJPIS, sir, for his valuable guidance and encouragement in all our efforts and support to ensure this webinar become a success. Thank you so much, sir. I'm very much grateful to our today's guest speaker, Dr. Supriya Bhallerao ma'am, Associate Professor, Isha, Bharati Vidyapeeth, Dean University, Pune, for giving us her vital time from her busy schedule and sharing her knowledge on scientific writing and publication ethics. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm also very thankful to all faculty members and students of our institute for their support and participation. I would like to thank all our online audiences for their attention and valuable time to make this webinar a fruitful and productive. I must extend my special thanks to Extension Shell PSL for the enormous cooperation in the organization of this webinar. I'm also very much thankful to Mihir Bhai, IT section, for all the technical arrangements for making this webinar a grand success. Last but not the least, a special thanks to all the members of Research Cell, Dr. Jasmine Gujarati ma'am, Dr. Shiv Prasad Sharma sir, Dr. Swagata Tavre ma'am, Dr. Nikhil sir for their sincere efforts and support for organizing the webinar successfully. Once again, I thank you all for your attention. With these warm words, I move to the end of today's webinar. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us, and you deliver always in a very simplified way. We'll call you, ma'am. We'll call you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, ma'am. Bye.